Welcome to the Iferia TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by John Ohlwiler, the founder and CEO of Sentry, an Inc. 5000 company and a Forbes Technology Council member. He is on a mission to cut through the AI hype, focusing on practical ROI-driven technology that transforms IT from a cost center into a true competitive advantage. He's he's built a company that serves clients across 28 states using his proprietary technology maturity model. In this episode, we'll dive into why most AI projects fail and how to implement technology that actually drives growth. So, John, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here today.
Great. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So, quickly, John, let's dive in. You have a powerful way of cutting through the hype, calling out the AI air guitar. So, what was the moment that made you decide to focus on practical ROI-driven tech instead of just selling the latest buzzword?
Yeah, so I've been in IT all my life. I was an internal CIO for a company for years before we started Sentry Technology Solutions. And just I've had a lot of industry expertise from working from big companies like Comcast to smaller other different type of companies. My last big firm that I was part of was a medical firm. So, a lot of mission driven type things like medical is really about patient care, things of that nature. And there's a lot of outcomes, not just money, but outcomes that you need to be responsible for. And technology is a big backer of that as well. Um, when we were working with Sentry was formed in 2014 as just a general IT consulting firm. And from there, we got into security and compliancy. And then over time, obviously, in the last 2 and 3 years or so, it's been a lot of AI automation, different styles of AI. And a lot of it comes from just the history of IT and seeing not just AI projects, but IT projects fail and what companies are actually doing to better themselves. Even before AI, there's a lot of systems and things that companies were doing, moving to ERP systems, moving to other line of business applications, things of that nature to try and make themselves more efficient. And a lot of times people would jump in with tools and, not necessarily get the desired outcomes. A lot of times it was a strategy that was broken or they just weren't ready to do that. And so that kind of gets into that technology maturity model, which I can either walk through now or walk through later. But that's kind of the, how we got to wanting to do the way that we do things and wanting to be more practical about the AI implementations we're doing.
All right, that's interesting. So, you talk about a 95% failure rate for AI projects. From your hands-on experience, what is the single most common reason a well-funded AI initiative crashes and burns?
Okay. So I think it's first, let's define kind of who I'm working with a little bit. You know, there's a lot of consultants out there that work with the Fortune 1000s, the large companies, and they're consulting. And these companies already have large teams. They're internalizing a lot of things. And there's usually some type of consultant leading strategy and leading training. When you get down into the smaller firms, they don't have that. And so most of what we focus on are the small to mid-sized businesses, and they need something very practical. They can't throw a lot of money in like a Fortune 1000 company can. And this is all very new to them. A lot of companies in the higher enterprise sector have been working with AI type technologies for years. Even before LLMs, you had machine learning, you had data lakes, you had all these things going on that the smaller firms just don't have. And so there are several studies, like the latest study that you're actually using to quote is from MIT that says 95% of all AI implementations fail. There's a few other studies from Microsoft and from other things, and that's all a very high percentage rate like that in the 80 to 90 range of failure rate. And I feel it's because really of two or three things. They didn't go in with a strategy and they weren't ready. what I mean by they weren't ready is I have a lot of conversations with smaller companies where they don't really have clear SOPs. They don't really have clear workflows. Their data isn't well organized. They don't have their data classified well. They don't have like data segmented into like what is or tagged into what's publicly available or what should, could go to the public versus what has proprietary data in it versus what maybe have some protected data like PII and things like that in it. They may save it in different areas, but there's no actual difference in classification. There's no structure. And then a lot of these companies have what I would call like application sprawl. They're using 5 or 6 different applications when they could just be like consolidated into like one type of system. And now if your employees have to go to 5 or 6 different systems, that means your AI systems and AI agents and stuff are going to have to do that as well. And that just adds so much more complexity to it. And then the third thing is a lot of people are jumping in, buying these things, and then not training their employees on them or not giving their employees a lot of leeway to be creative with them. So like when we first started with AI, we were an IT firm. I had a few engineers that were interested in it. We knew AI was kind of coming along, and we decided to go ahead and invest in some different AI tools, different software. We had bought some Copilot licenses, bought a few other things early on. And one of the first projects one of my guys did that he tried on his own was to build a fantasy football draft picker to kind of load in a bunch of data about different football players and figure out who the better fantasy football draft would be. What we learned through some of those personal kind of side projects, even though there was no real business, reason to do it, but what we learned was how to use these tools better, how they work. And now, it's become an actual product line for us where we're going in and we're consulting on AI. And we're going in and we're doing these projects with companies, and we're going in and we're training these companies as well. So you got to give your employees a little bit of leeway to play with it within some guardrails and learn about it, not just from the exact business job that they're doing, but a little bit more just overall about how AI works. You got to go in with the right strategy, and you got to go in with your data and with your systems well prepared for it, or it's going to fail.
All right. Let's talk about your technology maturity model. So can you walk us through it? And also for the engineers and systemic thinkers listening, what does this framework actually look like, and how does it guide the business from a basic IT support to using AI as a true competitive advantage?
Yeah. So that's a great question. It starts with what you would think, what we call operational IT. Operational IT is, can I get my email? Can I get online? Where's this file saved? Can I have access to this file? My computer doesn't turn on. All that normal stuff that most people think of with IT support and IT issues, right? And then from there, we've moved into security and compliancy. Obviously, I don't think it's any secret why security and compliancy is important and why that should be one of the base level foundation items of any ecosystem or any technology stack. And we could talk a lot about security and compliancy on its own, but from security and compliancy and operational IT, that's where I think a lot of IT companies stop. And then you get in from there, from those two pillars, we get into what we call business integrations. And so business integrations, from a technical point of view, a lot of people are going to think API integrations, software integration, stuff like that, which that's part of it. But the biggest piece of business innovations, what we know when somebody's hit a certain maturity level, is that they have clear KPIs around their data and how people are using data. They have clear workflows, not just within the computer system or within like the software, but within how the employees interact with that software. They have policies that they're holding employees accountable to, like password policies and different security policies, stuff of that nature, and they're actually holding their employees accountable. A lot of people go through security and compliance, they write a lot of great policies, but then they never enforce them. They never actually, do anything to hold people accountable to them. And it's not just security and compliance policies, but policies on how you would work through different types of business tasks, right? So that's the integration layer. And like I said, inside that, from the engineering point of view, yes, some of that does include like integrating software packages or, doing API calls and things like that. But from the business maturity side, you got to think about it much more from, the business side of how the business operates. So from there, that's when you get to move into your innovations layer, which your innovations layer is where things like digital transformation lives, where AI, some of those things are living. So you could follow this model with or without AI. This was kind of developed with or without AI. Obviously, generative AI agents, RPA type technology, stuff like that, they sit in that innovation layer. And so, a lot of people, I'll give you an example. We had a client we were working with a few weeks ago where it's a $10 million a year company, 35 or so employees, having a conversation with the CEO. Finally, about the third meeting we had with them, we're going through like, okay, you want to do this big AI project. We were talking to him. We're like, well, but none of your data is organized. None of these systems talk, everything like that. And finally, it hit him. He figured out on his own. He was like, oh, holy crap, we're going to have to like redo all this stuff and change the way we do our work and change the way we save our data and where our data is stored and all that stuff. It's like, yes, you are. And that's going to make your AI project that you want to do and your chatbot and stuff that you want to do a lot easier and a lot better, right? So that's kind of how you walk through that model. But I'll give you a non-AI example as well. If you look at something like the Domino's ordering app, I clearly remember when I was a kid calling Domino's, Pizza Hut, stuff like that after like a baseball game, and you'd order a pizza over the phone. It'd be an hour go by, you wouldn't get your pizza. You call again, and next thing you know, like 2 pizzas show up. One of them's cold. A little bit later, a third one shows up. They want you to pay for it twice. Like this is stuff I clearly remember this happening all the time, right? With Domino's, they own a patent on their app and on their whole ordering system. They actually own several patents, but basically you can order pizza on your phone or online or whatever, and you can track your pizza. You can track who put it in the oven. You can rate them. You can track who took it out of the oven. You can see when it left the store. It'll give you a warning 2 minutes before it gets to your house, right? And what did that do? On the business side, that cut down on food waste. It also gave some HR metrics to like who was performing better, who wasn't performing as good. It allowed them to, easily compare stores on other metrics besides just money, on, how quickly pizzas were being made, on where the holdups were in their systems. Like, were they having a problem where it was really slow from pizzas getting out of the oven into the box, or was it very slow where people were making the pizza before it got in the oven? Things like that, right? And then from the customer side, it did build customer loyalty. Now, where before they would just come up and knock on your door. Now it's like, oh, if you have a sleeping baby or you want to put the dog or something like that in another room or whatever, you get a 2-minute warning. So now you can kind of prepare to meet them at the door. You're not caught, in the bathroom or something like that, which could happen the other way, right? So that's kind of a company that kind of went through the same maturity model that we're talking about in a way. It started with systems that were very dispersed, weren't really talking. Obviously, a lot of chances of failure. They structured their company in such a way to where they had a lot of SOPs, the KPIs behind it, built systems around that. And now you have this whole workflow ecosystem that is, in a way, digital transformation with the app that they have and the whole ordering system they have. And it's given benefits across the board to the employees, it's given benefits to the corporation, it's given benefits to the end user / customer too, right? So that's what I would call a success story over the technology maturity model. And it actually, if you take a step back and you look at it from the technical level too, because I realize a lot of your listeners are engineers, stuff like that. If you look at the technical level, from the operational IT level, obviously every store has internet. Every store has devices that the users are interacting with, the tablets and or computers. There's software there. There's that operational IT piece. Obviously, from a security and compliancy piece, they're dealing with credit card data. They're dealing with customer address, stuff like that. They have security and compliancy. And between those two foundations, obviously the app is stable, seems to be secure. It works all the time. The truth is, if the app was insecure and getting hacked a lot, or if the app only worked, 1 out of 10 times, or even 9 out of 10 times, people probably wouldn't use it, right? It needs to work almost all the time for people to continue to use it. And so that's that operational and security and compliance level. But then they got into that other stuff we were talking about, HR metrics and workflow and how the restaurants are laid out and all these other things like that. And then, the software side, how are the different systems integrated? Where are people interacting with software systems and hardware, so on, to then be able to move into that innovation layer of, building this whole thing out the way that they did.
Oh, great. That was really insightful there, John. So you've built custom AI assistants for your own technicians. Can you share a story of a specific problem one of these AI tools solved, and What was the before and after in terms of efficiency and cost?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you some internal, but I can also give you some external too, because I think, a lot of business owners are or business leaders are gonna want to hear things that they can kind of, gravitate to. Obviously, we're very technical. We're an IT firm, so I've been technical from the get go. But a lot of our internal operations of things like automations of how we work on tickets, or when people report issues, we have a self-hosted LLM that's reading all those tickets and making some decisions on those tickets and stuff based off of our training that we put into it. We've done a lot of things like that internally, and I think it's kind of, for us, it's been really, really good on building efficiencies and saving some money and saving some labor hours, and then making things more stable and streamlined, which is good for us. But I think, normal businesses that are out there thinking, how do I use this? I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. Like, one is a bookkeeping firm that does outsourced bookkeeping. And they have some salespeople that would go, they're doing different sales activities to try and sell things. And every now and then, those salespeople, when they were down on quota and kind of felt like it, because I don't know if you've ever managed salespeople before, but sometimes they're a little hard to manage. But when they were down on quota and really need to get that last sell or two, what they would do is go out to like Indeed or ZipRecruiter or some things like that and look for companies in the area that were hiring bookkeepers or hiring certain type of positions like that. They'd do a little bit of research on that company, and then they'd go out and try and sell that company to outsource it to them versus hiring somebody internal, right? And so they had defined, they had a defined ideal client profile, of like what their ideal customer was, size-wise, stuff like that. So we built a bot basically that goes out at midnight every night and checks within certain geographical regions, certain job postings and descriptions that have certain things in them. If it has those things in them, it then goes out and researches that company, tries to find the key contacts, tries to make sure that it matches their ideal client profile. If all that checks out, then it dumps into HubSpot and they start doing sales and marketing automation of sending some emails and some case studies and some stuff like that. And also, has it set up to where it's in the sales funnel for a salesperson to follow up. So the ROI on that is a little cloudy because it was successful for 1 or 2 salespeople beforehand, and they were only doing it every now and then, and not all their salespeople were doing it. And so there'd be a few months that go by where no one was actually kind of doing the strategy. And the outcome afterwards, well, it's happening every night at midnight. So they're now catching all of those leads and all that potential opportunity. And the truth is, like, a project like that was around a $5,000 to $7,000 type project. And so if you look at an outsourced bookkeeping firm, they only need to do like one sell that is made that they wouldn't have made because of that. And they've broken even or surpassed breaking even on it, because a lot of these outsourced bookkeeping, you're getting them on a year-long contract or 3-year-long contract. It's a reoccurring thing. So one sell and they've basically paid for that little application. I guess before I describe more, I would say something to think about too is something like an agile development mindset. I recommend with any company that we're doing projects with, start small. Find little key things like that I just talked about, where it's just like a little small thing. It's a $5,000, $7,000 type investment. You make that investment, you get some ROI out of it, and then you go make the next one. Then you go make the next one. Then you go make the next one. One thing that some companies try and do is they try and jump off and do this really, really, really large project. They want to just completely revolutionize a whole department or something like that. And a lot of those fail because then you've got so many moving targets, you've got so many people involved, all these things like that, right? It's way more complex. It's going to cost a lot more. And by the time you get all the way through it, you've probably made a lot of mistakes. It's just, it's not a great way to go. Where if you do something more like the whole minimum viable product idea and just do little things here and there and do those little 1% changes, 1% change, 1% change. The truth is, you go down a 2-year path of doing that. You just do a new 1% change every month. And by the time you get, to the end of that, now all your systems are automated. Now you've got AI built into multiple layers of different workflows and things of that nature. And so I do recommend doing something like that. But the other example I was going to give you was with a manufacturing company that has a legacy software that runs some of their manufacturing equipment. And obviously they're not really going to change out that manufacturing software because it's tied to some expensive equipment, and there's not a lot of software players out there in that market. A lot of it would have to be custom developed. Like it's a really interesting thing. But it's keeping track of what they're producing and what they're making and how they're making it, and then from there it needed to go into their billing software to get billed and into UPS WorldShip to get shipped out. So what was happening is there was a manual process at the end of the day that after they did all the manufacturing for the day, one of the managers or the owner of the company was actually going in, after the floor cleared out, going in, pulling down data and taking that data and doing a few things to it, and then going and putting it in UPS WorldShip and going and syncing it to the billing software and stuff. And it was a very manual process. They were usually spending about an hour or so a day. Again, another one of those like $5,000 type investment things. We automated that entire workflow. Now it runs at midnight automatically, no human intervention. It takes all the data out of the line of business application, the manufacturing system, does all the manipulation that it needs, puts it into a format that works with UPS WorldShip, drops it into UPS WorldShip, and then also drops it into the accounting software, and all the billing goes out. So, that saved that company on average 30 to 40 hours a month of labor hours of some of their most expensive employees. So really a very quick ROI if you want to think about it like that, but that's one of those 1% changes. And then from there, we're already working on one or two other projects for them that are, again, smaller style projects like that are going to lead to bigger and bigger and better things. So that's the strategy we would prefer to work with people on, or that we would suggest, especially in the small to mid-sized market where you don't have the dollars of like a Fortune 1000 where you could just throw in a whole bunch of money. And even, and a lot of these bigger companies, if they throw in a whole bunch of money, they don't necessarily get an ROI. It doesn't hurt them as hard as some of the smaller businesses out there.
All right. So, John, looking at the current AI landscape, what is one tool or capability that is currently underhyped, but delivering massive practical value for the businesses that you work with?
I would say something like robotic process automation. Robotic process automation has been around for 10 or 15 years, and it has evolved over time, but you have things like Power Automate, UiPath, N8N, some other systems like that can do orchestration and automation at those levels. And a lot of these things, a lot of the AI stuff we're doing, like, yes, you have AI chatbots like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini that you can talk to and it can do some research for you, it can help you draft an email. And that's great. You can even do some private hosted LLMs where you're putting privatized data in and asking it, things about that data. And that's great too. And that will lead you to decision making, but the orchestration of actually putting that into workflows. So, if you have to go to the chatbot and you have to ask it about your return policy, let's say you're an e-commerce business, you're just asking about your return policy, it gives you some things about the return policy, or you ask it like, hey, we've got this return, blah, 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 blah. Tell me about how this matches up to our return policy. Should we return it or not? Like it's going to give you something, and that's cool. And that does help employees. But when you actually go and some type of orchestration, building out some type of agentic type flow, which there's different ways of doing this with true agentic, which is coming around, or some of this older RPA stuff does this just fine. And you just plug in some of the newer LLM stuff. But like, let's say you have some type of RPA, robotic process workflow, that checks the email. It reads that email. It then inputs it into the LLM for you. It then gets that data back. It then takes, based on that, makes a decision of yes or no or some other things. And like, okay, the LLM is, or the chatbot's 90% sure that this should be a return based on what it knows. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and fire off a workflow that sends them a shipping label and sends them a confirmation email and some things like that with no human intervention, right? And so a lot of that orchestration can happen today. You've got a lot of people that are really focusing on agentic AI that want to build it all in some sort of agentic workflow. And the truth is, a lot of these workflows have already existed. Like if you are already using RPA from 5-6 years ago, you could literally just update some of your RPA processes to then plug in calls to LLMs and calls to other AI type technologies to get that stuff done now, versus trying to build out something in like Langflow or one of those type agentic systems or whatever. That at the end of the day, from a business perspective, what's really the difference? If you're able to make the decision and you're able to have your workflow, whether it's an older technology or newer technology, what's really the difference in some of that, I guess. And so I think some of those like robotic process automation technology, I think are way more relevant now, and becoming way more to the public front, even though they're older technologies. Like Power Automate's been around for 10 years. UiPath's been around for probably close to 10 years as well. And it's something you could have taken a long time ago and done, but now it's showing a lot more relevance.
All right, that was really insightful. So, for the entrepreneurs and developers in our audience, what has been the hardest lesson about building a technology company that actually grows beyond just having a great product?
Really, this is going to sound weird, but it's about the personal connections. Like, a lot of our best clients are good clients because we meet with them regularly. We talk to them. We don't just pawn them off onto some AI automation to answer their questions. Now, we use AI to like help us answer the questions for the clients? Yes. Do we use AI to help us like build proposals and stuff? Yes. But we don't have it automated to the point to where it's super customer facing. There's usually still a human interaction. And I think the human interaction is going to want to stay there for a long time, because I think over time, a lot of humans are going to crave other types of human connection. And so even if you're just there as a friend with the answers and all those answers are coming from AI, I think you're going to want to see that. And I back this up with an industry use case. In the franchising world, you have Wendy's, makes hamburgers and stuff. And then you have Dave's Hot Chicken, which does chicken. And Wendy's, a year or so ago, launched this thing in their drive-through where you drove up and an AI bot would start talking to you, would talk back to it, but it was full of mistakes. A human used to always have to take over. Like, they got a lot of bad publicity over it, stuff like that. Dave's Hot Chicken has AI listening to every single order, and it's putting it into the computer for you, but you're still talking to a human, and the human can still look at the screen and verify it. So let's say you do have a big order where I want, 3 chicken things and this and that and a bunch of drinks and whatever, and the AI is putting it in. The human can be kind of doing some other things and just listening in, and then also, asking questions, stuff like that for clarification, but looking at the computer screen. And if there is a reason to make an update, go ahead and make that update and stuff. And, when the AI makes a mistake, the customer doesn't know. And so Dave's Hot Chicken didn't get the black eye that Wendy's did. And I kind of agree with that. I think people are going to want to continue to do that. If you think about like futuristic films and futuristic things like Star Trek or something like that, the computers that they talk to all the time could do a lot, but a lot of times it's still decision-making communication between the humans, or the beings that are driving what should be done, and kind of, talking about that critical thinking aspect. And I think some of that is always going to live with the humans side of it, the humanistic side, the
All
relationship
right.
piece, I guess.
Okay, that was an interesting one. So, John, part of the theme of this podcast is centered around innovation. So, for that reason, I like to reserve one question on innovation for every guest that we have a conversation with on this podcast. So, in your work, which is all about turning cutting edge technology into tangible business advantage, so what does the word innovation truly mean to you today?
I think it's an iterative process on getting better. And that definition of better could be different things, but everybody wants to be successful and
Mm.
everybody wants to be better. Like, everybody who's investing in something right now wants it to be more efficient, wants it to make more money, there's always something there that they want it to do, right? And so I think you take different things over time and you just continually make them better and make them better and make them better. And if you think about, that's kind of the story of AI. AI, the definitions that we use for AI, the first neural network was actually from the 1950s. And then from there, we've got into machine learning, we've got into other things before LLMs came out. And there's going to be something after LLMs that, there's already one or two things that have started to come out to market, or started to, see in research papers that look like they may be the next iteration of what an LLM is. And so I think if you're always kind of iterating and trying to make things better, that is, in a way, the definition of innovation.
Oh, fantastic. So finally, for our listeners who are tired of hype and want practical resources, so where can they go to, learn more about you, your blog, and your technology maturity model, or perhaps just connect with you to get to follow your, posts and resources?
Yeah, so you can always connect with me on LinkedIn and then centurytechnologysolutions.com or centurytechsolutions.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and stuff as well. We're always pushing out new blog posts, always pushing out new articles, things of that nature. And anything else that we're doing, you can pretty much find out on my LinkedIn or on Sentry's LinkedIn or Sentry's website.
Fantastic. I'll be sure to link these in the show notes. So, John, it's been a really insightful conversation with you, and I'm excited to have you on the show today.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
All right.